Okay, welcome. I know I did an introductory video, but I forgot in the introductory video to introduce myself. So, my name is David Ely, for those that have not had me before. This is the email I was talking about. If you have questions, you can email me. If you're under your school email, once you start typing DELY, it should come up. But that's my email if you have questions. Now, I put geometry and algebra together for just these first couple videos because we're going to be doing pre-algebra review for both. So I'm doing these together. After this, usually we'll separate and start doing separate videos. But so this is for both my geometry class and my Algebra 1A night class. Now, the Algebra 1A night class, I'm going to be posting 2 videos on this first assignment because you, as a night class, will be having 2 videos per day on your daily assignments. That way it stays in your night class format. But the geometry will be posted one each day because you'll stay in that format of every day. So this first video, I'm going to be doing some pre-algebra review. Both of them build off of pre-algebra, both geometry and algebra. So that's why I thought we'd start there. I know some of you guys had pre-algebra at the Excel Center, and some didn't. Some tested right into these classes. So I just want to go back to the couple basic things of those, make sure we have a good foundation. That way when we get into problems like isolating the variable and PEMDAS, that we are on the same page. First off, I want to greet you guys like I do usually the first part of the term when I'm at the Excel Center. I think what you guys are doing is awesome. Coming back to school, making sure you get your credits. I believe in the program. I'm proud of you for doing that, so I want to make sure that I lay that groundwork so that when you continue on, it becomes easier for you. So anyway, I personally like to do math problems on paper, on a board, so that's why I've kept it in this format so that you can go through and kind of walk through the problems. I'll do examples for you. What's nice about this format on the videos is you can pause it and go back and rewatch if you missed something and kind of take it at your own pace. But so the first thing we're gonna review for pre-algebra is PEMDAS, the order of operations. So if you've never seen this before, if you didn't take pre-algebra, it's gonna seem a little bit like where'd that come from, but if you did take pre-algebra class, we went through what we call PEMDAS. Now, it's also called PEMA, and some teachers even call it GMA, and I'll go through why that is, but basically these letters, it's an acronym like FBI or CIA. Each letter stands for something. So PEMDAS stands for parentheses, exponent, multiplication and division, those go together, and addition and subtraction, those go together. And the reason why they do that is when you're doing these in order, these right here will actually stick together, and so will these. Now, if you have not taken pre-algebra and you're like, what does this even stand for? This is for the order of operations. So it's for order of operations. Operations is anything we do in math, like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Those 4 main operations is any like you add something, you subtract something, that's called an operation. When you are doing it in math, math is its own language, so it has a lot of Greek tendencies, has, other things have been added to it. So there's a way to, what you would say, read or do these problems. There's an order to it. In the English language, we're so used to reading left to right that we think everything goes that way. We have to read left to right. But there's other ways, other languages read other ways. Hebrews reads right to left. I believe Chinese language reads right to left or up and down. So it's not always left to right. So when we do a math problem, it's not always just going to be left to right. There's going to be an order that we do those. And this gives us the order that we go in. Okay, so this gives us what order we have to follow each time. So this is what we're going to be using. I pause here for a little bit. I want to leave these up for a second. If you need to pause it, because like I told you at the introductory video, you're going to be taking notes and you're going to take pictures of your notes and the problems that you do. That way I can see that you did the daily assignment. and that will give you your credit for that day, the 10-point assignment or 20-point assignment sometimes. That gives you the credit, plus it is your attendance. So you have to do them in those time frames to be marked here, marked present. And even if you don't, you can still get the points for your grade, but you'll still be marked absent. So make sure you're following those time frames that I laid out in the introductory video. So here is the order of operations. Let's put some problems up and kind of put this into practice. Okay, so I'm going to be putting these into practice of following parentheses, exponent, multiplication, division, and addition and subtraction. Okay, so let's look at those. I've already set my eraser down like I do when I'm usually teaching at the school. Lose track of it, and then you get like a 30-second video of me just looking around for my eraser. Basically, let's do a couple problems here. I'm going to put one up here, 28 plus 6 divided by 2 plus 4 minus 3. Now, if we were doing this from left to right, we would get a totally different answer than the correct answer. Sometimes they come out the same. It's rare, but it's usually 98% of the time not correct if you just go left to right. An example would be, and this is the incorrect, I almost said incorrect, made up a word there for the internet, but an incorrect way to do this would be to do 28 plus 6 is 34, divided by 2 is 17, plus 4 is 21, minus 3 is 18. That would just be going left to right, okay? We don't do that though. We have to follow the order of operations. So what that means is I look through those letters, PEMDAS, and I say which ones do I do first or not. Now, the P is parentheses. I look through and say, is there any parentheses? There's not. So I move on to the E. E is exponents. Exponents are those little numbers that are written above here. Those are those exponents. If there's none of those, which there's not, I skip past those. I go to multiplication and division. Now here's the first thing about PEMDAS and PEMA and GMA is PEMDAS makes it look like that multiplication has to come before division, but it doesn't. Okay, this means that there's a tie, okay, meaning whichever one comes first from left to right, then you're going to do. So in this case, we're going to skip the addition because it's next, but we will look at the division. But it does not matter if there was a multiplication later, we do the division first. And I know that's kind of confusing, especially when we use the word PEMDAS, but multiplication and division are a tie. Same thing with addition and subtraction. Okay, a quick example of that is 8 minus 3 plus 2. It does not mean we have to do the addition before the subtraction. Okay, it just means that these two at the end are the last things you do in an order of operations. So in this case, I would still just go left to right. 8 minus 3 is 5, plus 2 is 7. Okay, so make sure you keep that in mind. And that's totally different than saying 8 minus 5 is 3, okay? You would just go 8 minus 3, which is 5, plus 2 is 7. So these two are a tie, and these two are a tie. Once you get down to where it's just addition and subtraction, then you go left to right. It's the same thing with multiplication division. That's why some teachers, and I used to teach it as PEMA, our program kind of leans towards this. That's why I made the switch. But PEMA, basically, when you teach it that way, you still do parentheses first. That never changes. Exponent. Multiplication division I teach as being a tie. So as soon as you get to multiplication division, that's what you look for. Addition and subtraction, same way. Okay. The only problem is if you leave out D and S, then you may completely skip them completely. So that's why it's taught as PEMDAS. Another thing real quick was GMA, and that's more if you get into higher math, because not everything is parentheses. Sometimes you have brackets, and so this stands for grouping, meaning parentheses, any kind of grouping, parentheses, brackets, is done that way, okay, first. It doesn't change any value, doesn't change the way you do it, it's just different letters. But going back to our way, PEMDAS, we're going to look at this problem and say, okay, there was no parentheses, there was no exponent, so we move on to multiplication division. Now I look through here, and the first thing I come to out of multiplication division is a division problem. So that's what I'm going to do first. So just to get in good practice, the best thing to do is, as you're learning, especially if you don't quite remember from pre-algebra and you're still kind of struggling, is to make sure you're doing step by step. I know it's a lot of extra writing, but it kind of keeps things organized. Now, if you get quicker and you're getting them right, that's my main concern when I tell students, you know, they always ask me, do I have to do it exactly like that? No, I'm not, you know, I don't always say, well, you have to do it this way. I just want to make sure they're coming out correctly. So if you get to where you can do a couple steps at once, that's fine. But as first foundational, I'm going to be writing every step. So I'm going to keep this 28 plus, okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do the 6 divided by 2, which is 3, okay. Then I'm going to rewrite everything still, plus 4 minus 3, okay. And so remember, the original way we had 34 divided by 2 is 17, 21 minus 3 is 18. You're going to already see that we're not going to be anywhere near 18, okay. So make sure you know it is not just left to right. We are doing our division first, and now we're on our second step. On the second step, I look and I say, okay, there was no parentheses, no exponent, there's no more multiplication or division, so now I'm at addition and subtraction. Okay, and so in that case, if all you have left is addition and subtraction, you're just going to go left to right. Okay, so in that step now, I'm just going to add them all up or subtract depending on what it's doing. 28 plus 3 is 31, okay, plus 4 is 35, minus 3 is 32. Okay, so 28 plus 3, 31, plus 4 is 35, minus 3 is 32. And that's my answer. You just work it down to this. Now, I have students when we, especially on the next thing when we get into like putting some letters into it, putting letters into the math problem, students always think you got to get down to one answer. When you're combining like terms, you think, oh, I got to have one answer. Well, when you get into that, sometimes you'll have still several things that you can't combine because the letters are different. When they're all numbers, though, you should get down to one value, to this value here, to, in this case, this value here. So kind of keep that in mind, that these are going to go down to one value because they're all like terms, they're all just numbers. There's no letters involved yet. So make sure you're getting down to here. Don't leave it, what I mean is don't leave this one as 28 plus 3 and you get 31 plus 4 minus 3 and you stop there thinking, okay, well I combine these and now I'm done. You are going to get down to where there's a single number value, okay? All right, let's do another one. This one's going to be a little bit different. This one will have a parentheses in it. So there's a couple things I want to cover when there is a parentheses in it. So we got 4 divided by 2 times 6 plus 3 plus 2 divided by 2. And for those that had me in pre-algebra, that was also the time that we introduced the dot midway up to be multiplication. Okay, so we did away with the x in pre-algebra because x that's used a lot as a variable. So remember, we switched this to a dot for multiplication. So just to kind of remind you guys that we're just in pre-algebra, that this dot needs to multiply in this case. Okay, so now let's look through and follow our PEMDAS and say which one we're going to do again. So in this case, we look through, there is a parentheses. So we go to the parentheses first. We're going to, this right here, we're not even going to mess with. Now, like I said, as you go on and you get a little bit quicker and you're doing 2 or 3 steps at once, some of these you can do, but for now, we're just going to keep all of these the same. 4 divided by 2 times 6 plus, and we're going to focus in on this parentheses. Now, inside the parentheses, we will still follow order of operations. So inside the parentheses, we have to also follow PEMDAS. Okay, so that means instead of doing the addition first, and I kind of use this one on purpose, because if you had done the division first, or the addition, and got 5 divided by 2, it wouldn't have come out even, and it's harder because you have fractions involved at that point. And so I wanted to kind of show you that hey, even in here, we have to follow order of operations, which means I do the division first. So I'm going to end up with 3 plus 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay? Now I left those in parentheses. If you're going step by step, you are still not out of the parentheses yet. So you've still got to work your way out of here before you can start these problems. Okay? If you're going step by step. So that means I'm going to rewrite these for now and do the 3 plus 1, which is 4. Now at that point, yes, it's still in parentheses, but there's no more work to be done in there. Nothing else to combine. I just have a 4. You can actually erase the parentheses if you need to, or you could have left it in there as long as you know there's no more work to be done in there. Okay, so now I have 4 divided by 2 times 6 plus 4. So now we're done with the parentheses. We move on to exponent. There are no exponents, so I move on to multiplication and division. Here's what I was talking about. Division, you think, oh, do I got to do the multiplication first? No. Okay, you have to go from left to right now. Okay, so 4 divided by 2 is 2 times 6 plus 4. Okay, now I look and I still have multiplication, meaning it comes before addition. So 2 times 6 is 12. Okay, and 12 plus 4 is 16. Okay, we got down to one value. So we did the parentheses first, okay? Then we did 4 divided by 2, which is 2, times 6, which is 12, plus 4 is 16. I'm still waiting to make my first math mistake and have to go back and either reshoot the video, which if I'm like 10 minutes in, that's not going to happen. Trust me, I'm going to be like, oh, you didn't see that. It never happened. But basically, this problem here worked out. So this is one that has parentheses involved. I'm so used to saying questions about that, but there's no one in here, so that would be a little weird. Here is the next one I want to do. Like I said, if you need to pause it or rewatch it, that's the luxury of having these on video. You can go back and watch that, kind of go through it slower if you need to. The next one, I'm going to put that grouping symbol that I was talking about. So here's a bracket, 16 divided by 9 minus 5 plus 5. Close the bracket here. So here's why I wanted to put one like this. You have more than one grouping. You have more than one, what you would say, parentheses letter. Because you've got a parentheses in here, but you've also got these, and you say, okay, what comes first then? Well, in the rule of parentheses in your PEMDAS, you are going to start at the innermost parentheses and work your way out. Okay, so you start at the innermost, this being the innermost. It's a parentheses inside of another group. Okay, so we're actually going to do this first. Okay, so in that case, we're going to leave this and say 16 divided by, and we're going to do the 9 minus 5, which is 4. Okay. Now what we have is we've got this parentheses, but we can get rid of it. Remember, we're done with it. And so I can actually turn these into parentheses now if I wanted to. Okay, where it looks like this. Okay, and if you're doing this on paper, not a board, you can't do that. You're going to have to write another step down there. Or you can just assume, well, I know I'm done inside here. Now I can continue on. Now this is a parentheses of its own, and I've got to follow PEMDAS, which means I got to do division before addition. So 16 divided by 4 is going to be first. Okay? 16 divided by 4 is 4. Plus 5. Okay? And just habit, I keep the parentheses, even though they're not really needed anymore. The 16 divided by 4 is 4 plus 5. And 4 plus 5 is 9. Okay? So that's what happens when not only do you have a parentheses now, but you have a parentheses inside of another grouping symbol. Okay? All right, let's look at a couple with exponents, because I wanted to do some with some exponents in there. Let you have an example of that. So here's one that is, and it's also got a parentheses, 4 squared plus 5 minus 12 divided by 6, okay? So here's an example that's got a parentheses and an exponent, and we're following PEMDAS, and so I wanted to put that example up there. Here is this example of, we're going to still start with parentheses, okay? We're still going to go with the parentheses first and leave this for later. But inside the parentheses, we have to follow PEMDAS, which means we got to do the exponent before the addition. And this has an exponent. Now I want to clarify that this exponent is inside the parentheses. It's not out here, and it just goes with this 4, which means we are squaring just the 4. And just so you remember, squaring means we're not doing 4 times 2. Okay, that we would have just wrote that as 4 times 2. We are doing 4 times itself. You can square anything. You can square, I always joke with my pre-algebra, you guys may remember, I squared a potato. I took potato and I squared it, okay, which means I did potato times potato. And you say, what? That doesn't even, why would you do that? Why would you square a potato? Because for one, they're tasty. And 2, we square words. We square feet. So like if I do 7 feet times 7 feet, it is 7 times 7, which is 49, but it's also feet squared, okay? So we're squaring feet as well. So that's where you can square words as well. But it's just to kind of remind you of that basis, I want to also stress that we are not doing 4 times 2. That's going to creep up from time to time. So 4 times 4, 4 times itself, is 16 plus 5. That's still in parentheses. Minus 12 divided by 6. Okay. And the reason why I left it in parentheses means we need to finish this off before we do this. So 16 plus 5 is 21. I can get rid of the parentheses. I'm done inside there. Minus 12 divided by 6. Now that I'm out of parentheses, I'm done with my exponents, I'm on to multiplication and division. There's a division, so I have to do that first. 21 minus 12 divided by 6 is 2. And then 21 minus 2 is 19. Okay? For some reason, I have green and red, so this is the Christmas version of these problems. One more with exponents is this one had the exponent inside, but I want to look at one that has an exponent on the outside, okay? And do one like that. Okay, so that problem is 5 plus 2 squared divided by 7 plus 4 squared. So this has an exponent here and it has an exponent there. And there is a difference, okay? And that difference falls into PEMDAS. If P becomes before E, means I have to do this first, okay? Parentheses first. So this is outside of the parentheses. So I'm going to do the parentheses first and do 5 plus 2, okay? Which is 7. That squared is still there, divided by 7 plus 4 squared. Okay, now I'm done in the parentheses. I'm going to do my exponents. And you can do these together if you want to, because you're doing exponents both times. So 49, that's 7 squared, that's 7 times 7, divided by 7, plus 4 times 4, which is 16. So I did all my exponents then. So I did the parentheses first, I did the exponents next, and now I'm going to do multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So the multiplication division comes first. That's first. So 49 divided by 7 is 7 plus 16. Okay, and then 7 plus 16 is 23. So that gives you several examples of how PEMDAS can be used. you know, whether there's parentheses in there, whether there's a parentheses inside of a parentheses, what happens with some of the exponents. And so that should give you enough to do some of the practice problems that I'm going to have you do. Now I'm going to put those on there. This will be part of your daily assignment. So make sure you show me pictures of your notes and these problems that you're going to do. I'm going to put about the same amount that we did together, and then you're going to do those for the points, okay? If it takes you a couple pictures, that's fine. Just send them. That way I have them and I see that you did them and tried them. If you have questions, if you get stuck on some, make sure you email me, or you can also reach other students through that people part of Google. If there's someone you already know and you want to ask them a quick question, feel free to do that. Just remember, when you post something on the feed, on the stream, everybody sees it, okay? Just putting that out there. So let me put the practice ones that I want you to do, okay? And then for my algebra students, okay, so geometry, this will be the only video that's posted today for that first day. This will be your first one on Monday. For my algebra students, I'm going to post the next one as well, and you'll have 2 videos to watch because algebra is 2 classes every other night. So I'm going to be posting 2 videos at a time. It'd be 2 of the videos together. So here is the practice problems I want you to do. Okay. And they're a lot like the ones we just did, so that way it kind of stays the same. You're going to see other kinds of problems as we go on, but this way you kind of keep it close. So that's number 1. Okay, number 2 is that's a dot for multiplication. Okay, and then this one's going to be a bracket with parentheses inside. Remember, start at the innermost and then work your way out. Okay. Let's divide. Okay. And then I'm going to do one more. I did this earlier, and just me hitting the floor made the camera fall. I created a mini earthquake. Hopefully those in Springfield were safe. Reed Springs and Lampy, I'm sure you felt it. Okay. All right. So these 5 problems I'm gonna have you do, and make sure you PEMDAS, follow that order, kind of go through. These are a lot like the ones we did, so if you need to go back and watch the practice video, make sure you do that. These are a lot, they kind of go in the same order I went, so that way you can kind of go through and watch them if you get stuck, and you'll turn that in with your pictures. All right, thanks.